Good afternoon, Cincinnati Rotarians and guests. My name is Doug Bolton, very proud and honored to be the president of this fabulous club. You know, each year Rotary International's president creates a theme. Our theme this year is Create Hope in the World. I was with some Rotarians last night, sharing stories and hearing how they're creating hope in the world. We have Denise Driehaus, Hamilton County Commissioner, with us today. Every single day she's working in our community to create hope in our world. I hope each of you are thinking about your story, about how you are creating hope in the world. Let's get our meeting kicked off, as we do every week, singing our national anthem led by Bill Stilley. Thank you, Bill. Will you all please keep in your prayers our member Brad Green, who lost his father this past Sunday. And now to continue our prayers and lead us in our four-way test, member Andy Zahn.
Good afternoon, and please join me in prayer. Dear friends and fellow Rotarians, as we gather today with a shared commitment of service, let us reflect on the values that bind us together: service, fellowship, and the pursuit of goodwill. May our efforts be guided by compassion and our actions inspire positive change within our community and beyond. Let us strive to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those we touch, and may our endeavors be a testament to the enduring spirit of Rotary. Amen. Now let us repeat the things we think, say, or do as Rotarians. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
You may be seated. Thank you, Andy. And now to announce our visiting Rotarians from far away, as well as guests and Rotarians right here in our community. Please welcome member Lisa Lickert.
Hello, hello, Rotarians. I get the pleasure of introducing two visiting Rotarians today. The first we have coming from the Rotary Club of Mumbai. We have Karan Patil. Will you please stand? Hello. And from the DC Rotary, please stand. We have Todd Miller. Todd and I connected before the meeting, and we will exchange flags at a later date. So we will make sure you get your flag, Todd. And as for our guest today, please stand as I say your name. Guest of Doug Bolton, we have Amy Tobin. Guest of Michael Schatzman, we have Hamilton County Commissioner Denise Driehaus. Guest of John Farmeyer, we have Mala Crosley. Guest of Judy Pogue, we have Otto Kendall. Guest of Josh Ruth, we have Rob Mancini. And another guest of Michael Schatzman and Eric Hill, we have Cheryl Woodhouse. Welcome to everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. And don't forget, if you'd like to pull your phone out, since our Sergeant-at-Arms didn't remind you, that make sure you silence it so that you don't get fined when your phone rings in the middle of the meeting. That fine is a contribution to our foundation. But also, while you're pulling your phone out, make sure you check in on Facebook. And then also maybe download or open up your DAC-DB app, because I'm going to remind you right now to do what? RSVP for next week's meeting. That's right. Remember, RSVPs are due every Friday at 5 p.m. for the following week's meeting. Our speaker next week is Corey Shaw, UC Health CEO, new to town. So looking forward to that. Make sure you register. Also on DAC-DB, there's plenty of opportunities to engage outside of our weekly meetings. As you know, we have our next breakfast coming up on August 22nd. At next week's meeting at 11 a.m., we have a professional development opportunity. Do you need to tighten your skills, freshen your skills on CPR? We have a special program on that at 11 a.m. here at the Phoenix. You need to register because spaces are limited. And then finally, that fourth week of August, busy time, please join us for Rotary After Hours at Uda Popke's house. Again, all of those opportunities are on DAC-DB, and you need to register. Finally, I'm going to ask Owen Rassman to come forward and talk about yet another opportunity that you need to register for, and that is a fabulous Reds outing. Following the Reds outing is Rotarians at Work. It's coming up quickly. It's September 14th. And Christy has some forms that you need to essentially sign up for. There are 6 fabulous Rotarians who have offered up their workplaces for us to go visit to. So please raise your hand, grab a form. It's a first come, first serve. Those spots fill up really, really fast, so you want to make sure that you get registered. So let's welcome Mr. Red himself. I'm surprised he's not in the uniform or Red Legs uniform or even Rosie's uniform. Owen Rassman.
Hello, Rotarians. Some of you have been with the club for a while know that this is an annual trek that I do with you all. And when Sarah and I spoke about 5 weeks ago, I thought this would be kind of easier. We secured 60 tickets in the boat deck, which is the center field right above the batter's eye. It's an area, it's an all-inclusive area. It's on Wednesday, September the 6th. It's a 6:40 game, and $80 a ticket, which gets you 2 beer tickets, all the refreshments, non-alcoholic beverages after that. There's ballpark fare, chicken, a barbecue, hot dogs, things like that. It's a nice, good day of fellowship. You know, in the past, I've always had to bribe you guys to get to this thing because, you know, you always wait till last minute. So we've sold about 40-some tickets, 45 tickets, so we have 15 or so left. I think we may be able to get a few more, but the attendance at the Reds game has been good. But I don't want to talk about the last 10 games. But so what I did decide was anybody that buys a ticket gets their name in the pot, and we'll pull for a De La Cruz jersey. And actually have 2 of them. So your size, whatever size, male, female, whatever. But we'll do that maybe at the game. But everybody that buys a ticket gets a chance. And we've got about 3 weeks. And so I expect you all to wait another 2 weeks and then buy your tickets. Well, remember, we will run out. But hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. All right, split the pot, get your tickets out, and 25% of the kitty is yours, 25% goes into membership development, and 50% goes into the rolling pot. So today's winner of the ticket that we're going to pull here in a second gets $46, and the rolling pot now is up to $565. I'm going to let our friend from Mumbai and it is 298915. 915. 298915. Oh, awesome. Here we go. Are you going to pull the hearts? Are you going to pull the Queen of Hearts? Is everybody, drum roll? Queen of Diamonds. Oh, so the rolling pot keeps building, the suspension keeps building. All right, just a couple more announcements, I believe. We have 2 committees meeting today. They are the Women in Rotary. Carol Cerrone joined me last night, so thank you, Carol, for reminding me about your committee meeting in the tea room. And then we also have the Board of Directors meeting immediately afterwards. We're going to get that meeting started right at 1:35. So board members, please report to the president's room as soon as our meeting is over. We have 4 Rotarians who are celebrating their birthdays, but none are here, so we don't have to sing happy birthday. It was so funny. One of the club members last night were like, "Are you guys a singing club?" I said, "Yeah, we sing a little bit," but I wasn't exactly sure what she meant by that, but I guess there are some clubs that actually sing happy birthday. So we get out of it this week, because next week, when someone's here, we're going to sing happy birthday. All right, I'm really proud to present to you our speaker today. You know, as many of you know, I used to be in the media business, reporter, editor, publisher, and there was a reason why people wanted to be a privately held company. They wanted to be private. And Dave Herche is one of those guys. He has run a privately held company. He's been involved in many privately held companies. And you know, he's not the most media-friendly guy. We tried to interview him a lot. And he was very, very modest with his time in terms of talking about himself and his company. So it's really a great joy that he actually agreed to come and speak. I think he is in somewhat of a retirement mode, but probably like most retirees, they say they're probably busier now in retirement than maybe they were when they were working. So probably all of you know Dave's story. Started out at Arthur Andersen as an accountant, met a really fine mentor there, Dave Phillips, who led him into business. One of the businesses that he got involved in, Enerfab, $150 million small company. When he joined it, they grew it into a multi-million-dollar company, employing thousands of people, involved in many, many industries. Now he's chairman of a holding company. He's going to talk about what that is, what that means, and his journey. Let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Dave Herche.
Thanks, Doug. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about before we talk about how we did Enerfab and some other businesses. So somewhere, my father, who worked for the IRS, was so conservative, he never took a risk doing anything. He didn't have a credit card. He didn't have a checking account. He worked for the IRS. walked to the gas house, the water company, and well, I can't remember the other, and he'd pay in cash. And that was how I grew up. I have an older brother who also was an accountant. He went to work for Cincinnati Gas and Electric, never took a risk, worked for 25 years, and he looked forward to retirement. That was his goal. Somehow, some way, I got involved with a number of things that were high risk. And I have a saying that I say, we're all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And so that's kind of what I did throughout my career. Went to Miami University, didn't have any money, so I had to figure out how to start a couple of little businesses. So one of them was, I lived in a fraternity house with 60 people. We had Coke machines, and I figured out how I could sell beer out of the Coke machines. But you can't, back then the money, it was 15 cents for a Coke, but you couldn't make any money doing that. So I put an empty can in and I put a full can in. You had to buy two to get a beer, and I made a pile of money doing that. I also was never afraid to work hard. I cooked breakfast for 60 guys every morning for about a two-year period for $50 a month. So kind of how I got started. One of the things that I think I can be grounded with and understand why I've been successful, because I really, really, really care about the people who work for me. And in today's world, as we talked about a little bit over here, you can't find enough people. So the people that you have that work for you, you better treat them right. So a couple of things that I do, and I have kind of a description of how we are successful. We got to attract, we got to train, we got to reward, and we got to retain all the people that work with you. Now, how do you do that? So I share the spoils with my key people. So yeah, I still have Enerfab, or it's now called HBH, the holding company, because we're spread around the country. But I have made, because I shared the spoils with those that are still here and those that were here when I took over the business in 1988, probably made 50 millionaires. Because I've shared the equity, we're all rowing the boat in the same way, and it's probably, from the heart, it makes me feel better for what I've done to others than what I put in my pocket. And we're very, very conservative about what we do and don't do. But risk, I have the risk gene, calculated risk gene. And so I've been able to take that, and how do we keep people? We have, generally what I have done is hired incredible amounts of co-ops out of the University of Cincinnati. 1989, I hired a young man who was from northeastern Ohio, lived on a farm, came to Cincinnati, had to get in the co-op program or he wouldn't have been able to go to stay at UC. We hired him in 1989. He's now the CEO of our business. We have the largest part of our business is, we call it Enerfab Power and Industrial, where we maintain all the power plants up and down the river, which is now changing, but we've also gotten involved in significant construction. We have a Ford battery plant that we're doing all the mechanical work for Ford in Kentucky, below Elizabethtown. For us, now, Doug didn't mention where our business is today, but we're about $1 billion business today. Very conservative, we have no debt, we share the spoils, we have 400 people working at a battery plant doing all the mechanical work, and it's about a $400 million project over 3 years. So we've now taken our business, because we've developed these people, into an area that we never, ever, ever would have thought. Now, fun story about that is that we have sold 30% of that business to the key guys at Enerfab. And when they came to us, the majority shareholders, and said, we want to get involved with it, we think we can do this $400 million project, our first answer was, there's no effing way we are going to take on a $400 million project. Because they owned a piece of it, they didn't give up. They said, let's follow it through. We were negative, 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 and finally, because of labor shortages, the project turned into a time and material project. So risk goes way down, almost nothing. And if we hadn't have shared equity with them, they'd have never done that. So it's a significant part of the growth. We have now been awarded another battery plant, because there's not too many contractors that can take on those kinds. So you're now in an elite group of people. And I think we're going to continue to grow with all the stimulus money that has been out there for non-fossil fuel energy, whether it's battery plants. We have a business that's kept capturing methane at farms and landfills. We have another business that's supplying products to the hydrogen business, the cryogenic industry, which is going to be the next power in the U.S. So that's kind of the history of Enerfab. We are all over the country. We have some interesting stories behind each one of the acquisitions. When I took over Enerfab, we were $20 million business. We had the rights. It was very troubled. The owner asked me to sell the business, and I could share. He'd share, if I got any cash, he'd share it with me. I could have sold it for $500,000 in 1988, put $250,000 in my pocket. I had no money, and instead of that, I said, let me have 30% of the equity and I'll turn it around. So we cut 30% of the people. We negotiated with all the creditors. We hired the right people. I found I can't execute stuff. I can't build stuff, but I had a guy that was there that can do all that. So I gave him 10% of the business. And that kind of generosity has grown us into what we are today. We made a number of acquisitions of other troubled businesses, and we cobbled it together with no financing, and kept it that way because it really helps you through downturns. So that's Enerfab. I think people know me for being Enerfab or HBH. The other thing that we did in 2000, so 12 years after I got the opportunity with Enerfab, the Fisher family, Michael Fisher and Bobby Fisher, came to me and said, we have a business in Westchester that we bought, and back then you could leverage almost the entire purchase price with lent money. And they then did that. It was a good business. They made an acquisition that blew up. They put all the debt on that acquisition here, and it turned that they were ready to write Provident Bank a check for $6.5 million, which was their personal guarantee, and go away. Same model. I said, give me 30% of the equity. If I get your name off the debt, the $6.5 million, pay me 30% of that, and get out of the way. And I brought in a friend of mine who worked for what was then First National Bank of Cincinnati. His wife had died. He worked for me at Arthur Anderson. He had 3 kids, and he quit First National Bank of Cincinnati because he had to take care of his kids. About a year later, I called him and I said, Tim, it's time to come back to work. he was in the basement with he's a short guy. He had a pile of laundry bigger than he was, and he looked at that and he said, you're right, it's time for me to come back to work. So we took this little business that was about a $50 million business. It's the same principles. We had 4 or 5 people we shared the wealth with. We bought the balance from the Fishers. Michael and Bobby stayed in for 15%. And 20 years later, in 2020, we had grown it to $250 million, sold it to some private equity guys for $200 million. So sharing, knowing how to treat people right are really, it's not that hard to do. You just got to surround yourself with the greatest people you can find. So, what else do I do? Cincinnati Works. Dave Phillips was my mentor, continues to be my mentor. He and his wife started it, gosh, I think it went back to like 90, somewhere in there, maybe a little bit before that, 85. I got on his board then, and together we have grown it to be, we have a budget of about $6 million. We have a new executive director who was the acting superintendent of schools for CPS. It's really a great story. She came from, she worked at Lakota, she worked at Princeton. When the Hyde Park Elementary School in the middle of Hyde Park was resuscitated from an empty building, the guys who did that found her and said, here, do it. And she had no help from them other than some money, and she executed that. Went to be the assistant superintendent. When the superintendent left and went to a nonprofit, and I can't remember which one, for a year, she was the acting superintendent. She is an absolute superstar. The board decided to do a search, which was okay, and found somebody from Dallas to bring into Cincinnati, and it's been a struggle for her. Tiani came to us, and she's been here just a little bit longer than a year, and she has set it on fire. It had lost its momentum. So my view is, with her execution, with my money, we're going to take this and go like this, and maybe even nationwide. So it's the lesson I learned from Dave Phillips is you got to give back. So that's where we're giving back. The other things that I'm doing is the University of Cincinnati Athletic Program. I'm very close, and it's a changing environment with the name, image, and likeness money that has to be raised to pay these student athletes, and it's incredible. For basketball, we raise $3 million per year. The needs of that is every year for 12 kids. It's insane. There has to be something done nationally about it, but it doesn't appear to happen here in the next couple of years. And then the last thing that we're doing, my wife and I are doing, and I told somebody over here, my wife has gotten very politically involved, right or wrong. She is so far out here to the right that we have our arguments, not that I'm way over here, but I'm a little more in here. But we have been involved with some organizations that are going to make a difference politically. So that's a lot of fun as well. And so that's, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've done. It's all about the people. My mantra that I said before, we're all faced with a series of great opportunities. Brilliantly designed is impossible situations. And that's what I've done. So I don't know if you have any. So questions?
We have a daughter that just graduated from
what the plans are.
What you want to do with CPS, Cincinnati Public Schools.
So one of the things with, I'm not involved with Cincinnati Public Schools, but one of the things that Tiana we're trying to figure out, and when I traveled over, when I was in Europe a number of years ago, we were in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, as you're in high school, you almost are required to be a co-op. So essentially you go to school for a week or a quarter, and then you go to work for a quarter. I don't know if we can get that done here, but what we're trying to do is take juniors and seniors, see if we can take alternate weeks or alternate months and put them to work. Because the stats of Cincinnati Public Schools are that 25% of the kids go to college. Maybe anymore, it's probably less than this now, but it was, 10% went in the military. And the balance are just turned out. And, unfortunately, the pandemic, these kids went for 2 years without learning anything, and they'll never catch up. So we're trying to figure out if we can take those high school kids, put them to work with some training, and the secret sauce of Cincinnati Works is we'll put chronically unemployed people to work and assign a coach to them. And the mantra is, call us before you quit. And we've been able, before the pandemic, we would serve about 800 kids or people, and about 80% of them would stay at work a year. And if you get them through a year, they've made it. And the thing that's unsaid is if you do that, the 2 or 3 kids they have now a model that's different than if we didn't put them to work. So it's the unemployed, chronically unemployed, don't have the skill set or the support without something like Cincinnati Works to maintain and get to self-sufficiency. So that's kind of what we do.
Lisa and Brian, keep going around. Lisa?
You share that you come from a family that did not take risks. Do you point to something that happened in your life that maybe attributes to the fact that you do take risks?
I don't know. I wanted more. And what I didn't say is the first time I took a risk, and this is remarkable. When I was still at Arthur Anderson, I bought 3 dry cleaners. I grew up in Western Hills. 3 dry cleaners because they're on every corner in Western Hills. So I bought 3 of them, put them together, not thinking like a private equity guy, but that's what they do. Put it together. Well, the other lesson I learned is I hired a high school mate who, when I'm working from turning Enerfab around from 7:30 to 9 o'clock at night, he's supposed to be running the dry cleaners, but I'm throwing money into it every month. And I talked to him, I said, John, you gotta reduce labor, you gotta work more. And he says, Dave, I'm starting at 8 and by 2 o'clock I can't do anymore. So I lost $100,000 in that dry cleaning business. And I think most people would have said, I'm not doing any of that anymore. But
Do you have a little bit of crazy in you?
I think, talk to my wife. She came, this is interesting. She came, we had a board meeting yesterday, and I have a very incredible board that helps us. The meeting started at 8 and it was over at 1. She came. As we left, she said, I can't believe you can sit there for 5 hours. So it's a different deal. It's a different deal.
Mr. Herche, first I'd like to thank you for the DHCAC. It's a special place, and your support is not, it's amazing what you've done.
You know what's interesting? There is not another athletic club still operating in the Midwest. We're the only one.
Only one left, and it's history that, it's just an amazing part, and I wanted to say personally thank you for that, because that's brought 20 years of mentors,
So I played, and I hurt my leg, or I had a neck surgery that compromised my leg. I'm about ready to go back and play. I played basketball from down there at lunchtime from probably 75 to a year ago. And fortunately that I had the resources that for 20 years, at the end of the year, they were always short. And quietly, I wrote them a check to keep them going so I could play basketball. There you go.
The exercise taking place up there is not for me. You just touched on it in your last statement, but I was wondering if you could share with us kind of some challenge moments where you were, how did you react to what are surely the letdowns of the people that you bring in from time to time, no matter how generous you are, how much you bring them in? How do you approach that kind of disconnect when you think you've made the right call and perhaps
About people, or?
people in their
Look, we've all made mistakes. We hired a sales guy that, you overpay him and he comes in and he pisses everybody off. So we had to turn him. It's hard, but nobody's perfect. We've made a lot of mistakes. We learn from the mistakes. But we generally it's kind of a club.
I wanted you to elaborate a little bit on why you think our future is in hydrogen.
It'll be low cost. It's cleaner than everything. They are in the process. Right now, there are behind many companies like Walgreens, behind Walgreens, the secondary protective energy source is liquid hydrogen behind their place. It's a whole lot easier and more readily available with no carbon emissions. And there are numerous people, BP investing incredibly in hydrogen power. So it's just the next thing. And the danger is separating water into oxygen and hydrogen. So there's some more development that needs to happen. But gas stations could be converted to hydrogen very easily. I have a pretty significant electrical business down in Tennessee, and it's crazy. The government has $2.5 billion they've allocated to put charging stations in every government building in the country. What they don't understand is the power coming into the building isn't enough to allow charging stations. So that $2.5 billion probably will double. It's crazy money, and it's not sustainable.
I'd like to know what your percentage of employee turnover is since you've been in business, and also how much international business you do, import and export.
We haven't done much internationally. And I'm thinking key people, engineers, estimate. I haven't calculated, but we don't have a whole lot of people that leave. So we all lose a few, but it's very, very low. That's why we're successful. You can't build a $20 million business to $1 billion business, have no debt, none, without having the best people you can attract, and you reward them for what they're doing, and they have a look forward to say, I may be an equity owner down the road. Now, I don't have family to pass along this. I own 2/3 of the business. I've made a lot of money. I'm very generous. The biggest thing we're working on right now is how to take my ownership and spread it around to the next guys up. I could sell this for a shit pot full of money. I don't need to do that. I want to leave a legacy of Enerfab in Cincinnati that'll be here at least for another full generation. I can't hear you.
My question is, well, thank you for coming to speak with us. And my question is, as kind of coming up and get things going, like you said in the 80s, you took over and started kind of building this empire that you got right now. How do you compartmentalize and be able to, with the family, and be able to run all these different businesses? I know you say you have 5-hour boardrooms, board sessions.
Right.
How do you make it all go and be able to put it together and still have some inkling of
First of all, I'm making myself indispensable. I don't need to be there. I spend half my time in Florida. So I have a partner, my first partner from 1988 that is still there but slowly transferring his responsibilities to the next. He owns 20%. I have another guy that we bought his family's business. He owns 10%. The next CEO, the next leader after that owns 5% today, and we just figured out we're going to figure out sell him another 10%, another 5%, and we're not using values up here. We're using values down here so they can afford to do it. And within probably, I'm 73. I'm going to live for another 20 years, but in the next 10 years, we will transfer ownership to the balance, those that run it. So they can lose sleep at night.
Other questions? I saw some other hands. Yes.
What is your vision for battery energy storage business?
What's my reason for what?
Your battery energy storage business.
I-
Battery business. Battery business.
Battery business. Talk about your battery business.
Oh yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah, what is your vision for your business?
Oh, what region? Vision for the, it's not necessarily just battery plants. We would call it a mega project. So when we took this project on, we're probably a $750 million business. You get a $400 million over 3 years. It puts you in a different environment. So whether it's a battery plant, whether it's a data center, whether it's a chip plant, there's just not very many of us that can execute a project like that because it takes the depth that we have. And so I have some friends that run Turner here in Cincinnati. And so, and one of them is on my board. And as we talk about these mega projects, he says, don't take all your resources from the mothership and put them over here because this will go away. Mega projects are here for another 4 or 5 years, then they go away. You can't lose track of your customers that are $20 million customers, $50 million customers. So it's a whole new labor. We've hired significant numbers of people to run this and not impact this over here.
Other questions? Yes.
David, in terms of your hiring of employees and stuff, do you think we're producing the right mix of graduates with technical degrees versus undergraduate degrees that are more like CPA oriented?
So Bob, most of what we hire, I mean, you can find accountants. You can find engineers. You can find estimators. Those people that are out there to manage construction are very, very difficult to find. And you have to figure out how to attract them. And our best salespeople are the people selling our culture, are the people that work there. So when, we go to UC, we go to Ohio State, we go to all the other construction colleges, and we tend to be a good place to work. The environment's really pretty good. So I had an engineer after the pandemic who he's taking a more leadership role and he needs to attract new talent. And he comes to us and he says, let me tell you, because we were going to, you know, the old guys are going to say, everybody's got to be in the office 5 days a week. He comes to us and said, you know, I'm trying to hire young talent. And if you don't have any flexibility, you're going to be screwed. Because the pool's this much. If you say, we're going to let you have flexibility, and we're not going to define what that is. You decide. The pool becomes like this, and you get the people at the top versus this lower group.
The common theme I hear in everything you say is that you value people more than money. And it seems to me that the big adventure of your life has been seeing people develop their potential and accomplish things they never thought they could do. Am I right about that?
Brings tears to my eyes.
Why do you love people so much? What is the well for your love of people?
You know, I'm not sure. Dave Phillips, and many of you may know who Dave Phillips, it was all about people. Yeah. And probably that's where it started. But when my original partner comes in my office 5 or 6 years after we started getting success. You get lucky too. You know, I'm probably the luckiest guy in the world. You know, Enerfab, we're struggling along, we don't see a big growth span. The next thing we know, Anheuser-Busch, because we build a lot of beer tanks, gives us a $25 million order. Dayton Power and Light has a falling out with their construction guys, comes to us and said, we have an outage at Stewart Station in north of Cincinnati, and it's a $15 million project. Can you do it? So we did that, and it takes us to the next level. My partner, Wendell Bell, doesn't have a college education, ran all my construction. 7 or 8 years after he and I partnered, he comes in my office. You've changed my family forever. That's what it's about. Fogarty.
Do you have as much confidence in the future generation, the love of the future generation as you have?
I think it's different. It's a little different than, yeah, I think, you know, I'm not sure the motivation, you know, I was motivated to make a pile of money, to help others. I'm not sure I see a whole lot of that. It's different. It is different. And Fogarty, you know Fogarty. So when I asked him if he wanted to come and be my partner, this is a great story. I told you about he was doing laundry, and he said, you know, I can do it. I can't be there every day. But when we put the contract together with the Fishers, they gave me 30%. Tim and I worked together, and I said, you get 15 and I get 15 because we're going to be partners. He said, you don't need to do that. I said, that's how we work. My 2 partners at Enerfab, because I wasn't going to be there much, I gave each one of them 5, so I ended up with 5%. As we bought the balance out, I bought the bigger part, so it turned out. But there's not very many people that'll do that. That's why people stay. And if you don't have to be a shareholder, we share 20% of the profits with all the people.
Real quickly, what's Enerfab's outlook on the economy? Is there a recession looming? What are you seeing?
Not a significant recession, and we're doing a lot of stuff and the beneficiary of a lot of stuff that's been funded by the government. And labor still is a problem. A lot of that money hasn't been spent. Infrastructure bill, and I can't remember how much it was, $1.9 trillion almost. Hardly any of that's been spent. So in our business, things are going to be good. I don't think we're going to see a deep recession. My biggest concern that could be a game changer is current administration thinks we can get from pollutants to green in this amount of time. No frickin' way. If they would just say, we're going to get there, it's going to take this. And if you think about not drilling for any, natural gas is as clean a fuel as you can find. We can't do that. If we could do that, export liquid natural gas to Western Europe, the dynamics of international conflicts would change. Common sense. I don't know why.
Any other questions? So quick lightning round. East side, west side? What's your favorite? I know.
I grew up in Western Hills. It's in my heart.
Okay. All right.
Conservative.
UDF Raiders?
Neither. I can't eat ice cream.
Okay, all right.
Graders.
Graders, okay. I think I know UC Xavier.
Yeah.
I know that.
You know that.
UC. Gold Star Skyline.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have a lightning round question? Yes, Michael.
SDS or Bruno's?
I don't know what SDS is.
Delivery service up down in Miami.
Oh. We don't deliver food to our house. I have 3 outs. You go out, you grill out, and you carry out every once in a while.
So this is not a lightning round question, but you know, he was named in 2017 Philanthropist of the Year. You know, obviously Cincinnati Works is your passion.
Right. Right.
What's the big problem in our community that you haven't gotten involved in that maybe you think you might in the next set of generous gifts?
Well, my wife and I are trying to figure that out. I got a lot of money, and I'm going to give it away before I die. I'm going to take care of her, but
All the nonprofit members, raise your hands.
I think it's got to be on helping the kids that are underprivileged, that don't have a hope, unless you can figure out how to change the landscape.
Well, we thank you for speaking. We have this, you know, we think the Rotary Club of Cincinnati is pretty special. We have a phenomenal foundation, so we would love to have you engaged in our work as well. And we focus a lot on special needs kids. So this is a coin that has our 4-way test, as well as a picture of the skyline of the city I know you love. Let's
Awesome.
give him a warm
Yep.
welcome. So Dave, we've also made a small donation in your name to Rotary International, which is continuing to try to eradicate polio in our world. So thanks again for speaking. Again, a reminder, by tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock, make sure you go into DACDB and register for next week's meeting. And our two meetings today, Women of Rotary, even if you're not a signed up member of that, I know Carol would love to have you in the tea room, join the women in the Rotary Club, and then the board meeting begins on time at 1:30 in the President's Room. Meeting adjourned.